The rain poured down on the concrete steps of Pierce Technologies as Jonathan Pierce sat hunched over, his expensive suit soaked through, his hands shaking not from cold but from the devastating reality that had just crashed down on him. The hostile takeover was complete. 37 years of his life's work, gone in a single afternoon. The board had voted him out. His own company, his baby, now belonged to his biggest competitor. His phone buzzed with notifications. Bank accounts frozen. Assets seized. Credit cards declined. The penthouse apartment he'd called home for 15 years would be repossessed by morning. Everything he'd built, everything he'd worked for, everything that defined Jonathan Pierce as a person had vanished in the span of 6 hours. He looked up at the building that bore his name, though by tomorrow even those letters would be torn down and replaced. The security guards he'd employed for years walked past him without recognition, treating him like any other vagrant seeking shelter from the storm. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, a man who'd once been worth $12 billion, sitting on the street with nowhere to go and no one to call. His wife had left him 2 years ago, taking half his wealth and all their mutual friends with her. His parents were dead. He'd been so focused on building his empire that he'd never built a family. A gentle voice broke through his thoughts. "Sir, are you all right?" Jonathan looked up to see a young African-American woman, probably in her early 20s, standing under a piece of cardboard she was using as an umbrella. Her clothes were worn but clean, her dark skin glowing despite the circumstances, and her brown eyes held a kindness he hadn't seen in years. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with money or status. "I'm fine," he lied, his voice barely audible over the rain. "No, you're not," she said simply, kneeling down beside him. "Nobody sits in the rain like this when they're fine. I'm Naomi. What's your name? Can you imagine losing everything you've ever worked for in a single day? What would you do if you found yourself with nothing, no one to turn to? Subscribe and tell us in the comments how you think this story should unfold." "Jonathan," he whispered. "Well, Jonathan, this isn't a place to spend the night. Trust me, I know. Come on." She extended her hand to him. He stared at her hand for a moment. This woman, who clearly had nothing, was offering to help him. "I don't have anywhere to go. Neither do I, officially. But I know a place that's warm and dry. Come on." Something in her voice made him trust her. Maybe it was because he had no other choice, or maybe it was because she was the first person in years to look at him and see a human being instead of a bank account. He took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. As they walked through the empty streets, Naomi chatted easily about the weather, the city, anything except why a man in a $1,000 suit was sitting homeless in the rain. She led him 6 blocks to an abandoned warehouse, slipping through a gap in the fence that she'd clearly used many times before. "Home sweet home," she said, leading him through a door that looked locked but opened easily. Inside, she'd created a small living space in one corner. Blankets hung from the ceiling for privacy, candles provided soft light, and she'd even managed to arrange some furniture she'd found. "This is incredible," Jonathan said, looking around. "How long have you been living here?" "About 8 months," she said, lighting a few more candles. "I know it doesn't look like much, but it's safe and dry. Better than a lot of places I've stayed." She handed him a towel and a change of clothes. "These might be a little big on you, but they're clean and dry. There's a corner over there where you can change." "I can't take your clothes," Jonathan protested. "You can and you will," Naomi said firmly. "When someone offers you help, you take it with gratitude. That's rule number 1 of surviving out here." Jonathan changed into the oversized jeans and hoodie, both worn but clean. When he emerged, Naomi had prepared a simple meal of canned soup heated over a small camping stove. "How do you do this?" he asked, sitting across from her on a makeshift couch made of cushions and blankets. "How do you stay so positive when you have so little?" Naomi smiled, and it lit up the entire space. "Who says I have little? I have my health, my mind, my freedom. I have this place to sleep safely. I had enough food to share with someone who needed it. Sounds like a lot to me." Jonathan ate the soup, and it tasted better than any meal he'd had in his 5-star restaurants. "I lost everything today," he found himself saying. "My company, my money, my home. Everything." "That sounds terrible," Naomi said, but her tone wasn't pitying. "What kind of company?" "Technology. Software development mostly. We created platforms for small businesses to manage their operations." He paused. "We help people, at least I thought we did." "Helping people is never a waste," Naomi said. "Maybe you lost one way of helping, but that doesn't mean you can't find another. Easy to say when you're not the one who just lost $12 billion. "You're right, I've never lost $12 billion, Naomi laughed. But I've lost everything that mattered to me too. My parents died in a car accident when I was 17. I aged out of foster care with nowhere to go and no family. I've been fired from jobs for things that weren't my fault. I've slept in shelters where people steal your shoes while you sleep. But you know what I learned? Jonathan shook his head. Rock bottom is a solid place to build from. When you've got nothing left to lose, you can take risks you never could before. You can be honest in ways you never were when you had something to protect. What would you do? Jonathan asked. If you had the chance to start over, really start over, what would you build? Naomi's eyes lit up. You really want to know? For the next 2 hours, as the storm raged outside, Naomi talked about her ideas. She spoke about mobile apps that could help homeless people find resources, about community kitchens that could be funded through food waste from restaurants, about job training programs that met people where they were instead of expecting them to fit into rigid systems. Jonathan listened, amazed. This woman, whose society had written off, had a mind that rivaled any MBA he'd ever hired. Her ideas weren't just innovative, they were practical and compassionate. These are brilliant ideas, he said finally. They're just dreams, Naomi replied. Takes money to make things happen, and money is something I definitely don't have. But what if you did? What if someone wanted to invest in these ideas? Naomi studied his face in the candlelight. Are you offering something, Jonathan? Because if you are, I want to be clear that I'm not looking for charity. I'm looking for partnership. Jonathan felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. I might be completely broke right now, but I know how to build companies. I know how to find investors and navigate regulations. What I don't have is ideas that matter anymore. Ideas that could actually change lives. And I have the ideas but not the connections or the business knowledge, Naomi said thoughtfully. Exactly. What if we helped each other? Naomi extended her hand. Partners? Without hesitation, Jonathan shook it. Partners. As they settled in for the night, Jonathan realized that losing everything might have been the best thing that ever happened to him. For the first time in decades, he felt like he had a purpose beyond just making money. He had found someone who saw the world the way he'd forgotten how to see it. Outside, the storm was ending and tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, in an abandoned warehouse with a woman who had every reason to be bitter but chose kindness instead, Jonathan Pierce began to understand what wealth really meant. Jonathan woke up to sunlight streaming through the dirty windows of the warehouse. For a moment, he forgot where he was, expecting to see his penthouse view of the city skyline. Instead, he saw Naomi moving quietly around their makeshift camp, organizing supplies and preparing what looked like breakfast. Morning, sunshine, she said, noticing he was awake. Sleep okay? Better than I have in months, actually, Jonathan admitted, sitting up and stretching. The floor had been hard, but something about the space felt peaceful. What time is it? About 7. I like to get an early start. There are things to do if you want to survive out here. She handed him a cup of coffee that smelled surprisingly good. How did you manage real coffee? I have my sources, Naomi grinned. A friend who works at the coffee shop down the street saves me the leftover grounds. I brew it strong to make it last longer. Jonathan sipped the coffee, impressed by her resourcefulness. This is better than what I used to pay $15 for. Everything tastes better when someone makes it with care instead of just for profit, Naomi said, settling down with her own cup. So, about last night. Were you serious about this partnership idea? Completely serious. But I should probably be honest with you about my situation. When I said I lost everything, I meant everything. I have exactly $47 in my wallet and that's it. $47 is more than I usually have, Naomi said. Besides, money isn't the only thing that matters in business. You still have your experience, your knowledge, your connections. Those don't disappear just because your bank account does. My connections might not want to talk to me anymore once word gets out about the takeover. Then we'll make new connections. Better ones. Naomi stood up and walked to a corner where she had a small notebook. I've been writing down ideas for 3 years. Want to see? She handed him the notebook, and Jonathan spent the next hour reading through pages of detailed business plans, market analyses, and innovative solutions to problems he'd never even considered. Her handwriting was neat and precise, her thinking clear and logical. Naomi, this is incredible work. You've thought through implementation strategies, funding models, even potential obstacles. How did you learn to do this? Library computers and free business courses online, she said simply. When you've got time and no money, you learn to educate yourself. I spent 2 years reading every business book I could find. Why business? Why not something else? Naomi was quiet for a moment, staring out the window. Because I got tired of being helpless. I got tired of watching people suffer when there were solutions right there, just out of reach. Business is how things get done in this world. If I wanted to help people, I needed to understand how the system works. Jonathan felt a familiar excitement building in his chest, the same feeling he'd had when he first started his company. We should start with something small. Test the market, prove the concept. I already have, Naomi said, pulling out another notebook. For the past 6 months, I've been running a small operation helping other homeless people find resources. Look. She showed him records of dozens of people she'd connected with jobs, housing assistance, healthcare, and other services. She'd created a simple system using a library computer and social media to match people with available resources. You're already running a business, Jonathan realized. A very small one. But yes, I suppose I am. How many people are you helping? About 50 so far. But I could help more if I had better tools and more time. Jonathan set down the notebook and looked at her directly. Naomi, I want to propose something. I know I don't have money right now, but I can get it. I still have contacts in the investment world who might listen to a solid business plan. What if we take your resource matching idea and scale it up properly? What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we build an app that connects people in need with available resources in real time. Not just for homeless individuals, but for anyone struggling with basic needs. Food banks, job training programs, healthcare clinics, housing assistance. Everything in one place, updated constantly, accessible from any phone. Naomi's eyes widened. That could help thousands of people. Millions eventually. And the beautiful thing is, it's a for-profit business model that actually serves people who need it most. We charge service providers a small fee to list their resources, use that money to keep the app free for users. But we'd need developers, designers, marketing people. I know all of those people. The question is, are you ready to take this seriously? Because if we do this, we do it right. Full commitment. Naomi stood up and paced around the small space, thinking. Jonathan could see her mind working, analyzing the possibilities and challenges. Okay, she said finally. But I have conditions. Name them. First, we do this as equal partners. Not you doing me a favor, not charity, not you teaching the poor girl about business. Equal partners with equal say. Agreed. Second, every decision we make has to serve the people who need help first, profit second. The moment we put money ahead of helping people is the moment I walk away. Absolutely agreed. Third, I want to stay here while we build this. I know that might seem strange, but this place keeps me grounded. It reminds me why we're doing this. Jonathan looked around the warehouse space. It wasn't ideal for business meetings, but he understood her reasoning. We'll make it work. And fourth, Naomi said, her voice becoming softer, I need you to understand that I'm not just your business partner. I'm a person with my own dreams and goals. Don't try to rescue me or fix me. I'm not broken. I can see that, Jonathan said seriously. You're one of the strongest, smartest people I've ever met. I'm not here to rescue you. If anything, you're rescuing me. Naomi smiled, and Jonathan felt something shift in his chest. Was it possible to fall for someone so quickly? He pushed the thought away. Business first, he told himself. But he couldn't ignore how her smile made him feel more alive than he had in years. So, what's our first step? She asked. We need to create a proper business plan that investors will take seriously. We need market research, financial projections, a development timeline. I can handle the market research. I know this community better than any consultant you could hire. Perfect. I'll work on the technical specifications and financial modeling. We should also start reaching out to potential users and service providers, get their input on what they really need. They spent the rest of the day planning, and Jonathan was amazed by how well they worked together. Naomi's practical experience combined with his business knowledge created something neither could have achieved alone. As evening approached, Naomi prepared another simple meal, and they ate while continuing to discuss their plans. Can I ask you something personal? Jonathan said as they finished eating. Depends on how personal. What happened to your family? You mentioned they died in an accident, but you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. Naomi was quiet for a long moment. They were coming to pick me up from my part-time job. I was 17 working at a grocery store after school. It was raining just like last night. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit them head-on. I'm sorry. I was supposed to be in that car, she continued. But I'd stayed late to help close the store because another employee called in sick. For a long time I felt guilty about that. Like I should have died with them. But you didn't? You survived for a reason. That's what I tell myself now. For a while though, I just felt lost. Foster care was okay, but I never really belonged anywhere. When I aged out, I thought I'd figure things out quickly, but life had other plans. How did you end up here? Lost my job about a year ago. Budget cuts. Couldn't make rent, got evicted. Spent a few months in shelters, but they're not safe for women alone. Found this place and decided to make the best of it. You never considered asking for help? From social services or charities? Naomi laughed, but not unkindly. Jonathan, I've asked for help more times than I can count. The system is broken. That's why I know we can fix it. What do you mean? Most people who want to help don't know how. Most people who need help don't know where to find it. There are resources out there, but they're scattered and hard to navigate. Our app isn't just about connecting people with services. It's about making the whole system work better. Jonathan nodded, understanding. You're talking about revolutionizing social services. I'm talking about making them actually serve people instead of bureaucracy. As they settled in for their second night together, Jonathan realized how much his perspective had changed in just 24 hours. Yesterday he'd been focused on rebuilding his personal wealth. Tonight he was excited about building something that could change lives. Thank you, he said to Naomi as she extinguished the candles. For what? For helping me remember why I wanted to build companies in the first place. It wasn't about the money. It was about solving problems that mattered. Well, thank you for believing in me. Most people look at someone like me and see a problem to be solved. You see a person with solutions. That's because you are a person with solutions. In the darkness of the warehouse, with the sounds of the city settling around them, Jonathan felt something he hadn't experienced in years: contentment. Not the temporary satisfaction that came from closing a big deal or seeing his stock price rise, but genuine peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they started building their business together. But tonight he was exactly where he needed to be. The next morning brought new realities. Jonathan's credit cards were officially canceled, his phone service cut off, and a notice arrived via messenger informing him that his penthouse apartment had been seized by creditors. He was now truly homeless, not just temporarily displaced. Welcome to my world, Naomi said when he shared the news. The difference is now we're in this together. I don't know how to do this, Jonathan admitted. I haven't worried about basic survival since I was 22 years old. Lucky for you, I'm an excellent teacher. Today is going to be Street Life 101. Their first stop was the public library, where Naomi had a routine established. She'd convinced the librarians to let her use a computer for 2 hours each morning in exchange for helping organize returned books. Jonathan watched in amazement as she efficiently handled both tasks, managing their research while earning her computer time. This is brilliant, he said as they worked on refining their business plan. You've created a barter system. Everything's a negotiation when you don't have money, Naomi explained, pulling up market research data. The key is offering something valuable in return. My time and skills are valuable, even if I don't have cash. After the library, Naomi taught him about finding food. She had relationships with 3 restaurants that saved leftover meals for her instead of throwing them away. She'd proven herself reliable and grateful, so they trusted her to come by at closing time. The trick is being respectful and consistent, she explained as they walked to the first restaurant. Don't just show up when you're desperate. Show up regularly, thank people properly, and never cause problems. Eventually, they start to see you as part of their routine. At Tony's Pizza, the owner actually smiled when he saw them coming. Hey Naomi. Got your usual box ready. Who's your friend? This is Jonathan. He's helping me with a business project. Nice to meet you, Tony said, handing over a box of perfectly good pizza that was simply from earlier in the day. Any friend of Naomi's is welcome here. This girl's got more class than half my paying customers. Jonathan was struck by the genuine warmth in the interaction. Thank you so much for this. Don't mention it. Food goes bad if it sits around anyway. Better to feed people than feed the garbage. As they left with enough food for 2 days, Jonathan shook his head in wonder. In all my business dealings, I never built relationships that genuine. That's because you were focused on transactions instead of people, Naomi said. When you're vulnerable, you can't afford to see people as just money sources. You have to see them as human beings. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to lose everything and start over from scratch? What would you do differently if you had to rebuild your life from the ground up? Subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Their next lesson was about safety. Naomi showed him the best places to spend time during the day, the areas to avoid after dark, and the subtle signs that indicated whether a space was truly safe or just appeared to be. See that alley? She pointed out as they walked through downtown. Looks clean and quiet, right? But notice there's only one exit. Something bad happens, you're trapped. Always choose spaces with multiple ways out. I never would have thought of that. Most people don't have to. You're learning survival skills that you hopefully won't need for long, but they're good to know anyway. They spent the afternoon at a community center where Naomi volunteered twice a week, helping people fill out job applications and navigate government assistance programs. Jonathan watched her work with clients, noting how she combined genuine empathy with practical problem-solving skills. Mrs. Rodriguez, this form is asking for your previous employment history, but I know you've been taking care of your mother for 3 years, Naomi said patiently to an older woman who was struggling with paperwork. That's work experience too. We'll list it as family care management and describe the responsibilities. But that's not a real job, Mrs. Rodriguez protested. Managing medication schedules, coordinating doctor appointments, handling financial records, providing emotional support. That sounds like a real job to me. A hard one that requires lots of skills. Jonathan was impressed by how Naomi reframed the woman's experience, helping her see her own value while being completely honest. When Mrs. Rodriguez left with a completed application and renewed confidence, she hugged Naomi tightly. You have such a gift for this, Jonathan said as they walked back toward the warehouse that evening. It's not a gift. It's experience. I've been where they are. I know what it feels like to think you're not qualified for anything, to feel like your life experiences don't count. Is that how you felt when you first became homeless? Completely. I thought I was worthless because I couldn't even manage to keep a roof over my head. Took me months to realize that surviving homelessness actually requires incredible skills. Resource management, networking, problem-solving, adaptation, resilience. Those are all valuable business skills. They were quiet as they walked, both lost in thought. Jonathan found himself seeing the city differently than he ever had before. He noticed details that had been invisible when he rode past in luxury cars. The intricate social networks among people society ignored, the small acts of kindness that kept communities functioning, the intelligence and creativity that poverty couldn't diminish. Can I share something with you? Jonathan asked as they settled into their warehouse home for the evening. Of course. Today was one of the most educational days of my life. I learned more about real business and human nature in 8 hours than I did in 4 years of Harvard Business School. That's because this is real, Naomi said simply. School teaches you theories. This teaches you how things actually work. I keep thinking about what you said yesterday about me being focused on transactions instead of people. You're right. I built a successful company, but I never built real relationships. What happened with your marriage? If you don't mind me asking. Jonathan was quiet for a moment, considering how much to share. We grew apart. Or maybe we were never really together. We looked good together, we moved in the same social circles, we wanted the same status symbols. But we never really saw each other as people. That sounds lonely. It was. I just didn't realize how lonely until I lost everything and discovered that I didn't have anyone who cared about me as a person rather than as a bank account. And now? Jonathan looked at her across the candlelit space. Now I'm sitting in an abandoned warehouse with someone who saw me at my lowest point and still thought I was worth helping. Someone who's teaching me things about life and business that I never knew I needed to learn. Is that a good thing or a scary thing? Both, he admitted. But mostly good. Naomi smiled. I feel the same way. I've been on my own for so long that I forgot what it was like to have a real partner. Someone who listens to my ideas and takes them seriously. Your ideas are exceptional, Naomi. Any investor worth their money will see that. Speaking of investors, do you really think you can get meetings? After what happened with your company? I think so. The business world is funny. They might not want to hire me or give me money for myself, but a good idea is a good idea. If our plan is solid enough, someone will want to fund it. And if they don't? Then we bootstrap it. Start small, prove the concept, grow organically. It'll take longer, but it might be better in the long run. They worked on their business plan until late into the night, refining their market analysis and financial projections. Jonathan was continually impressed by Naomi's insights and attention to detail. She caught potential problems he would have missed and suggested solutions that were both practical and innovative. You know what I realized today? Naomi said as they prepared for bed. What's that? I spent so much time thinking about what I didn't have that I never fully appreciated what I did have. Intelligence, determination, the ability to connect with people. Those things are worth more than I gave them credit for. They're worth everything, Jonathan said. Money is just a tool. The real value is in who you are and what you can create. Is that your way of saying you don't miss being a billionaire? Jonathan laughed. I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss some things. Comfortable beds, hot showers, the ability to eat whatever I wanted whenever I wanted it. But honestly, I don't miss the isolation. I don't miss spending my days focused on numbers instead of people. What do you miss most? The ability to make things happen quickly. When you have unlimited resources, you can test ideas immediately, hire the best people, scale up fast. Starting from nothing means everything takes longer. But maybe that's not entirely bad. Maybe taking time means we'll build something better. You might be right. As they settled in for the night, Jonathan reflected on how much his life had changed in just 3 days. He'd gone from living in luxury but feeling empty to sleeping on a warehouse floor but feeling purposeful. The transformation was remarkable, and he knew it had everything to do with the extraordinary woman lying a few feet away from him. He was beginning to realize that losing his fortune might have been the luckiest thing that had ever happened to him. It had led him to Naomi, and to a sense of purpose he'd forgotten was possible. Tomorrow they would take their next steps toward building something meaningful together. Tonight, he fell asleep feeling grateful for every twist of fate that had brought him to this moment. A week into their partnership, Jonathan was starting to understand just how much he'd underestimated Naomi. Every day revealed new layers of her intelligence and capability that went far beyond what he'd initially seen. It started when she casually mentioned having redesigned the workflow system at her last job before being laid off. What kind of workflow system? Jonathan asked as they sat in the library working on their app specifications. The company made custom furniture. Orders would come in through different channels, but there was no central tracking system. Salespeople didn't know what production could handle, production didn't know what sales had promised, and customers were getting frustrated with delays and mistakes. So what did you do? I created a simple database system that tracked every order from initial contact through delivery. Nothing fancy, just organized. Reduced errors by about 70% and cut delivery times by 3 weeks. Jonathan stopped typing and stared at her. You built a database system? It wasn't that complicated. Just logical organization with some automation for the routine stuff. Naomi, that's exactly the kind of system that companies pay consultants $50,000 to develop. Really? It only took me about 2 weeks to set up. Show me, Jonathan said, turning his laptop toward her. For the next hour, he watched as Naomi sketched out the system she'd created, explaining her logic and methodology. Her approach was intuitive but sophisticated, solving complex problems with elegant simplicity. This is incredible work, he said when she finished. Why didn't you mention this before? I didn't think it was that important. Just seemed like common sense. Common sense maybe, but most people can't execute at this level. Have you done other projects like this? A few. When I was volunteering at the community center, I helped them organize their client tracking system. And I created a resource database for the shelter I stayed at for a while. You've been building software solutions for years. I guess so. I never thought of it as software development. Just problem solving. Jonathan felt excitement building. If Naomi could design systems this sophisticated, their app development would be far easier than he'd expected. Would you be interested in handling the technical architecture for our project? I don't know if I'm qualified for that. Based on what you've just shown me, you're more qualified than most people I've hired in the past. The question is whether you want to do it. Naomi considered this, her mind clearly working through the implications. I'd like to try. But I'll need to learn some new programming languages. The library has online courses and I can teach you what I know. With your analytical skills, you'll pick it up quickly. That afternoon, Naomi dove into learning web development with the same focused intensity she brought to everything else. Jonathan watched her absorb information at a remarkable pace, asking smart questions that showed she understood not just the syntax but the underlying principles. You're a natural at this, he said as she successfully created her first interactive web page. It's like building with logical blocks. I can see how all the pieces fit together. While Naomi learned coding, Jonathan worked on the business development side, reaching out to potential investors and partners. The response was mixed. His name still carried some weight in certain circles, but his recent failure made others hesitant. However, their app concept was generating genuine interest. The idea of a comprehensive resource matching platform filled a clear market need, and their preliminary research showed strong demand from both service providers and potential users. I have a call scheduled with Marcus Chin from Riverside Ventures tomorrow, Jonathan told Naomi as they walked back to the warehouse that evening. He's interested in hearing our pitch. That's great. Are you nervous? A little. It's strange being on this side of the table. I used to be the one evaluating investments, not asking for them. What's our strategy? Jonathan smiled at her use of our. We focus on the market opportunity and your insights into user needs. Your experience gives us credibility that no MBA consultant could provide. Should I be part of the call? Absolutely. You're my business partner, not my employee. Besides, your voice is crucial to this project. The next morning they set up for the video call at the library. Jonathan had borrowed a decent shirt from the community center's donated clothes, and Naomi wore her best clean outfit. They looked professional despite their circumstances. Marcus Chin appeared on screen, a serious-looking man in his 50s with silver hair and expensive glasses. Jonathan, good to see you. I was sorry to hear about Pierce Technologies. Thank you, Marcus. I'd like you to meet my business partner, Naomi Johnson. She's the driving force behind this project. Nice to meet you, Naomi. I understand you've been researching this market extensively. That's right, Naomi said confidently. I've spent the past year working directly with people who need these services and the organizations that provide them. The disconnect between supply and demand is significant. For the next 30 minutes, they presented their concept, with Naomi handling the market research and user experience while Jonathan covered the technical implementation and financial projections. Marcus asked detailed questions, clearly impressed by their thorough preparation. The market opportunity is substantial, Marcus said finally. But I have concerns about execution. Building an app like this requires significant technical resources. Actually, we've already started development, Naomi said, sharing her screen to show the prototype she'd been working on. This is our basic framework. It's not pretty yet, but it demonstrates core functionality. Marcus leaned forward, studying the interface. You built this yourself? Yes, with Jonathan's guidance on business logic. I handled the technical architecture and user interface design. Impressive. How long did this take you? About 10 days of part-time work. Most development teams would need months to create something this functional. Marcus paused, making notes. I'm interested in moving forward. Can you have a more detailed technical demo ready by next week? Absolutely, Jonathan said. After the call ended, Jonathan and Naomi sat in stunned silence for a moment. Did that just happen? Naomi asked. I think we just got our first serious investor meeting. He seemed impressed with the prototype. He was blown away by it. Naomi, what you've created in 10 days would cost most companies 6 months and $50,000 in development costs. So we have a real chance? We have more than a chance. We have a competitive advantage that nobody else can match. They spent the rest of the day expanding their prototype, adding features and refining the user interface. Naomi's design instincts were remarkable. She understood intuitively how to make complex information accessible and easy to navigate. How do you know how to do this? Jonathan asked as he watched her create an elegant solution to a complicated data sorting problem. I think about how I would want to use it when I'm stressed or scared or desperate. Most apps are designed by people who've never really needed help. They make assumptions about what users want instead of understanding what users need. That's brilliant insight. You're thinking about emotional design, not just functional design. Exactly. When someone is looking for help, they're probably not in their best state of mind. The app has to work even when they're overwhelmed or distracted. As evening approached, they returned to the warehouse with takeout from Tony's Pizza and Chinese leftovers from another restaurant that had joined their informal network. I keep thinking about what Marcus said, Naomi mentioned as they ate. About technical resources being expensive. What happens when we need to scale up beyond what I can build myself? We hire people. Good developers, designers, project managers. That's a lot of money. That's what investor funding is for. But honestly, I think you're underestimating your own capabilities. You might not need as much help as you think. I'd like to try handling it myself first. If I get overwhelmed, then we bring in additional people. Jonathan nodded, understanding her desire to prove herself. That works for me. But promise me something. What? Don't sacrifice your health or happiness trying to do everything alone. This is supposed to make our lives better, not worse. I promise. Same goes for you though. I've noticed you working until 2 in the morning every night. Fair point. We should set some boundaries around work hours. They established a schedule, work from 8 to 6, then personal time. It was a small step, but it felt significant. They were learning to be partners in every sense of the word. Can I ask you something? Naomi said as they prepared for bed. Always. What was your ex-wife like? The question surprised him, but he found he wanted to answer honestly. Beautiful, intelligent, ambitious. We looked perfect together on paper. But we never really talked. Not like this. We discussed schedules and social events and business obligations, but we never shared our real thoughts or dreams or fears. Why not? I think we were both too busy trying to maintain an image to be authentic with each other. Everything was about appearances and status. Do you miss her? Jonathan considered this carefully. I miss the idea of having a partner. But I don't miss her specifically. We were married for 5 years, but I don't think we ever really knew each other. That sounds sad. It was. But it also means I've never experienced what a real partnership could be like. And now I'm beginning to understand what I was missing. There was something in his voice that made Naomi look at him more closely. Jonathan. I know this is complicated, he said quickly. We're business partners, we're both in difficult situations, and the last thing either of us needs is to make things more complex. But I can't pretend I don't feel something happening between us. You're the most remarkable person I've ever met, and spending time with you makes me happier than I've been in years. Naomi was quiet for a long moment. I feel it too, she said finally. But you're right that it's complicated. We don't have to figure it out tonight. Or tomorrow. We can take our time and see what develops naturally. I'd like that. For now, let's focus on building our business and getting our lives stable. But I want you to know that I care about you too. As a person, not just as a business partner. Jonathan felt warmth spread through his chest. That means everything to me. Good. Now let's get some sleep. Tomorrow we have an app to build. As he settled in for the night, Jonathan reflected on how different this conversation had been from any he'd had with his ex-wife. There was honesty here, vulnerability, genuine connection. For the first time in his life, he was beginning to understand what love might actually feel like. The business was progressing beyond his wildest expectations, but the personal connection developing with Naomi felt even more valuable. He was learning that success wasn't just about building something profitable. It was about building something meaningful with someone who mattered to you. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. But tonight, he fell asleep feeling grateful for every moment that had led him to this warehouse, to this partnership, and to this incredible woman who was changing his entire understanding of what life could be. 2 weeks later, their prototype had evolved into something genuinely impressive. Naomi had created an intuitive interface that could connect users with resources in real time, while Jonathan had developed the business partnerships and funding strategy that would make it sustainable. They were preparing for their formal presentation to Marcus Chen and 2 other potential investors when Naomi made an observation that changed everything. I've been tracking our test users, she said, looking at data from their beta version. The most successful matches aren't just about finding available resources. They're about finding the right person at the right time. What do you mean? Look at this. She showed him the screen. Mrs. Rodriguez from the community center needed job placement help. The system matched her with 3 available services, but she only followed through with one. Want to guess which one? The one with the best program? No, the one where she talked to someone who had been in her situation before. Someone who understood what she was going through personally, not just professionally. Jonathan studied the data, seeing the pattern Naomi had identified. You're talking about peer support networks. Exactly. People don't just need services. They need connection with people who understand their experience. So we're not just building a resource matching app. We're building a community platform. Right. And that changes our entire business model. They spent the next several days completely reconceptualizing their approach. Instead of simply connecting people with institutional services, they would create a platform where people could find both professional resources and peer support networks. This is much more complex to build, Jonathan warned. But also much more valuable, Naomi countered. And much harder for competitors to replicate. Anyone can create a database of services. Not everyone can build authentic community connections. The new approach required additional features. User profiles, community forums, peer matching algorithms, and safety protocols. Naomi threw herself into the development work with remarkable energy and focus. Jonathan handled the business development side, reaching out to potential community partners and refining their investor pitch. The response was enthusiastic. Several organizations wanted to pilot the platform, and Marcus Chen's interest had evolved into genuine excitement. We have our investor meeting in 3 days, Jonathan told Naomi as they worked late one evening. Are you confident we'll be ready? The demo will be ready. Whether I'll be ready is another question. What do you mean? I've never done anything like this before. Presenting to investors, asking for money, making promises about what we can deliver. What if I mess it up? Jonathan set down his laptop and looked at her directly. Naomi, you've built something in 3 weeks that most teams can't create in 6 months. You understand this market better than any consultant they could hire. You have insights and experience that no one else can offer. But what if they ask questions I can't answer? Then you say you don't know and you'll find out. Honesty is always better than pretending to know something you don't. Easy for you to say. You've done this before. Actually, it's not easy for me to say. I'm terrified too. This surprised her. You are. Completely. The last time I pitched to investors, I was worth $12 billion and had a track record of success. Now I'm homeless, my last company failed spectacularly, and I'm asking people to bet on an idea that exists mostly in our heads. But you seem so confident. I'm confident in our idea and in your abilities. I'm less confident in whether investors will see past my recent failure to recognize what we're building. Naomi considered this. So we're both scared. Terrified. Good. That probably means we care enough to do this right. The night before their investor meeting, they did a final run-through of their presentation. Naomi handled the technical demo and market research while Jonathan covered the business model and financial projections. You're ready, Jonathan said when they finished. More than ready. You're going to be amazing. How can you be sure? Because you always are. Every time you're challenged, you rise to meet it. Every time someone doubts you, you prove them wrong. What about you? Are you ready? I think so. For the first time in my career, I'm presenting something I genuinely believe in rather than just something that might make money. And that feels different? Completely different. Better. They went to bed early, both nervous but excited about the next day. Jonathan found himself thinking about how much had changed since that first night when Naomi had found him in the rain. He'd gone from having everything materially but feeling empty to having almost nothing materially but feeling fulfilled. The next morning, they prepared carefully for their meeting. The community center had a small conference room they could borrow, and Jonathan had managed to get a proper suit from a clothing donation program. Marcus Chin arrived with 2 colleagues, Sarah Kim from his investment firm and Dr. James Wilson, who specialized in social impact investing. Thank you for meeting with us, Jonathan began. 3 weeks ago, my business partner Naomi and I identified a significant gap in how people access social services and community support. For the next hour, they presented their vision. Naomi demonstrated the platform's capabilities while sharing insights from her research and personal experience. Jonathan explained their business model and growth strategy. The investors asked thoughtful questions, clearly impressed by the depth of their preparation and the sophistication of their approach. This is impressive work, Dr. Wilson said. But scaling community-building technology is notoriously difficult. How do you plan to maintain quality as you grow? By keeping the community at the center of everything we do, Naomi answered. We're not trying to automate human connection. We're trying to facilitate it more effectively. Can you elaborate on that? Most platforms grow by adding features and complexity. We want to grow by deepening relationships and trust within existing communities, then expanding to new communities that share similar needs and values. Sarah Kim leaned forward. What's your biggest risk? Losing sight of our mission, Jonathan said immediately. The moment we start optimizing for profit over people, we become just another app that doesn't actually help anyone. How do you prevent that? By keeping Naomi in charge of product development and user experience, Jonathan said. She has lived experience with these challenges, and she won't let us build something that doesn't serve real needs. The meeting concluded with the investors requesting additional financial projections and a more detailed technical roadmap. We'll have a decision for you within 2 weeks, Marcus said as they shook hands. After the investors left, Jonathan and Naomi sat in the empty conference room, processing what had just happened. How do you think it went? Naomi asked. I think it went very well. They were engaged, they asked smart questions, and they didn't immediately say no. Dr. Wilson seemed skeptical about scaling community technology. He's right to be skeptical. It is hard. But that's exactly why your approach is so valuable. You're not trying to scale technology. You're trying to scale human connection, which is much more sustainable. Do you think they'll invest? I think they'd be crazy not to. But even if they don't, we have other options. And we have proof that our concept works. That evening, as they celebrated with pizza from Tony's and worked on refining their technical roadmap, Naomi brought up something that had been on her mind. Can I tell you something? Of course. A month ago I thought my life was basically over. I was surviving, but I wasn't really living. I had given up on the idea that things could get significantly better. And now I wake up every morning excited about what we're building and who we're building it with. I feel like I have a future again. You've always had a future, Naomi. You just needed the right opportunity to show what you're capable of. Maybe. But it's more than that. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. Like what I do matters to more than just me. Jonathan felt that familiar warmth in his chest. It does matter. What we're building together is going to help thousands of people. And what about us? Personally, I mean. What about us? I know we said we'd take things slowly and focus on the business first. But I keep thinking about what you said the other night about never experiencing a real partnership before. I think about that too. I care about you, Jonathan. Not just as a business partner. I care about you as a person, and I think I'm starting to fall in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Jonathan felt his heart racing. I'm definitely falling in love with you, he said quietly. I have been since the night you found me in the rain. You saved my life in every way that matters. So what do we do about that? We keep building something amazing together, professionally and personally. We take our time and do it right. Naomi smiled, the expression lighting up her entire face. I'd like that. Good. Because I can't imagine doing any of this without you. As they settled in for the night, Jonathan reflected on how completely his life had transformed. A month ago he'd measured success purely in financial terms. Now he understood that real wealth came from meaningful work, authentic relationships, and the opportunity to make a positive difference in the world. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they waited for the investor's decision and continued developing their platform. But tonight, lying in their makeshift home with the woman he was falling in love with, Jonathan felt richer than he'd ever felt when he had billions of dollars. The best part was knowing that this was just the beginning. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. While they waited for the investor's decision, Jonathan and Naomi decided to test their platform with real users. They partnered with the community center where Naomi volunteered, creating profiles for 50 people who needed various forms of assistance. We're going to learn more from 2 weeks of real-world testing than from months of theoretical planning, Naomi said as she helped their first group of users set up accounts. The results were immediate and encouraging. Within the first week, they had successfully connected 12 people with jobs, 8 with housing assistance, and 15 with healthcare services. But more importantly, they had facilitated dozens of peer support connections. Look at this, Naomi showed Jonathan a message thread between 2 users. Maria was nervous about her first day at a new job, so she reached out through our peer support feature. 3 other women who had recently started jobs at similar companies responded with encouragement and practical advice. That's exactly what we hoped would happen. It gets better. One of those women, Patricia, is now mentoring Maria through her first month. They've met for coffee twice and text each other regularly. Jonathan studied the user engagement data with amazement. People are spending an average of 43 minutes per session on the platform. That's incredibly high for a social service app. Because they're not just getting services. They're getting community. Their success attracted attention from other organizations wanting to pilot the platform. A homeless shelter, a job training program, and a community health clinic all requested to join their network. We're growing faster than I expected, Jonathan said as they reviewed partnership requests. Are you comfortable handling the technical demands? I think so. The architecture I built is designed to scale. Adding new organizations and users shouldn't break anything. What about user safety? With more people and more interactions, we need better protocols. Already working on it. I'm developing a verification system for service providers and a reporting mechanism for users who have negative experiences. Jonathan was continually impressed by Naomi's foresight and technical abilities. She anticipated problems before they occurred and built solutions that were both elegant and practical. 2 weeks after their investor meeting, Marcus Chen called with news. We'd like to offer you funding, he said during their video call. Based on your pilot results and growth projections, we're prepared to invest $500,000 for a 20% stake in your company. Jonathan and Naomi exchanged excited glances. It was more money than they had hoped for, with better terms than they had expected. That sounds very reasonable, Jonathan said. We'd like to accept your offer. Excellent. There's just one condition we'd like to discuss. What kind of condition? Naomi asked, her voice cautious. We'd like you to consider relocating your operations to a proper office space. While we appreciate your current approach, Professional presentation becomes important as you scale. Jonathan looked at Naomi, knowing how she felt about leaving the warehouse. Could we have some time to discuss that? Of course. But it doesn't have to be expensive. We know of several incubator spaces that offer reasonable rates for startups. After the call, Jonathan and Naomi walked through the city, discussing their options. I know you want to stay in the warehouse, Jonathan said. And I understand why. But he has a point about professional presentation. I'm not worried about the presentation. I'm worried about losing touch with why we're doing this. What do you mean? Living in the warehouse keeps me connected to our users' experiences. If I move to a comfortable office, will I still understand what it feels like to need help? You'll always understand that because of who you are, not because of where you live. Are you sure? You lived in luxury for years and it disconnected you from people's real needs. Jonathan considered this carefully. You're right that comfort can create distance. But there's a difference between running away from struggle and having the resources to help more people effectively. Explain that. When I was wealthy before, I used my comfort to avoid thinking about other people's problems. You want to use resources to solve other people's problems. The motivation matters. Naomi nodded slowly. So moving to an office would be about building our capacity to help, not about personal comfort. Exactly. And we can choose a space that keeps us connected to the community we're serving. They spent the next few days looking at potential office spaces. Most were sterile corporate environments that felt wrong for their mission. Then Naomi found something interesting. What about this? She showed Jonathan a listing for a renovated warehouse in the same neighborhood where they'd been living. It's affordable, it's close to the community center, and it still feels authentic. The space was perfect. High ceilings, lots of natural light, and an open layout that would encourage collaboration. Best of all, it was walking distance from most of their community partners. This feels right, Jonathan said as they toured the empty space. Professional but not pretentious. And if we design it carefully, we can create space for community meetings and user feedback sessions. They signed the lease and began planning their move. With their investor funding, they could also hire their first employee. We need someone who can handle customer support and community management, Jonathan said as they reviewed applications. Someone who understands our mission and can communicate effectively with users. Actually, I have an idea. What about Patricia, the woman who's been mentoring Maria through our platform? The one who was recently unemployed? Yes. She has a background in social work, she understands our user community personally, and she's already proven she's good at peer support. That's brilliant. Let's interview her. Patricia Martinez was enthusiastic about joining their team. She brought both professional skills and lived experience that would be invaluable as they grew. I love what you're building, she said during her interview. This platform gave me hope when I needed it most. Now I want to help other people have that same experience. What would be your priorities in this role? Naomi asked. Making sure every user feels heard and supported. Technology is powerful, but it can't replace human connection. My job would be to keep the human element at the center of everything we do. They hired Patricia immediately and spent her first week training her on the platform and their community management philosophy. The key is authentic engagement, Naomi explained. We're not trying to provide customer service. We're trying to build relationships. I understand. It's about treating people as whole human beings, not just users with problems to solve. With Patricia handling community support, Naomi could focus more on product development while Jonathan expanded their partnership network. They were growing steadily but sustainably, staying true to their values while building something genuinely useful. One evening, as they set up their new office space together, Naomi brought up something that had been on her mind. Are you happy with how things are going? She asked as they arranged furniture. Incredibly happy. Why do you ask? Sometimes I worry that this isn't exciting enough for you. You're used to building companies worth billions of dollars. We're celebrating 50,000 users and our first employee. Jonathan stopped what he was doing and looked at her seriously. Naomi, this is the most meaningful work I've ever done. I'd rather build something that matters to 50,000 people than something that makes money for 50 investors. Really? Really? And besides, I'm not just building a company this time. I'm building a life with someone I love. You love me? Completely. I've been wanting to tell you that for weeks. Naomi smiled, walking over to him. I love you too. I was just waiting for you to say it first. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her softly. Everything about the moment felt right, from the work they were building together to the relationship that had grown naturally alongside their professional partnership. "So what happens now?" she asked, leaning against his chest. "Now we keep building. The business, our relationship, our community. We take it one day at a time and see how far we can go together." "I like that plan." As they finished setting up their office, Jonathan reflected on how different this success felt from anything he'd experienced before. Previously, achieving goals had felt like reaching destinations. This felt like beginning journeys. Tomorrow would bring new users, new partnerships, and new challenges. But tonight, in their small office with the woman he loved, Jonathan felt like he had everything he needed to build something truly meaningful. The best part was knowing that Naomi felt the same way. They weren't just business partners anymore. They were life partners, committed to building something together that would last. 6 months after their first investor meeting, the platform had grown beyond their most optimistic projections. They now served 15,000 active users across 12 cities, had partnerships with over 200 service organizations, and had facilitated more than 50,000 successful connections. "These numbers are incredible," Jonathan said, reviewing their quarterly report. "We're growing by 30% each month, but user satisfaction is actually increasing instead of declining. That's because we've stayed focused on community building instead of just user acquisition," Naomi replied, studying feedback from their latest user survey. "People don't just use our platform. They become part of it." Patricia had become invaluable as their head of community relations, managing a growing network of peer mentors and volunteer coordinators. She developed training programs that helped users become community leaders, creating a sustainable model for growth that didn't depend entirely on paid staff. "We have 17 cities requesting pilot programs," Patricia reported during their weekly team meeting. "But I think we should be careful about expanding too quickly." "Why?" Jonathan asked. "Because what makes us special is the personal connection. If we grow faster than we can maintain relationships, we become just another service directory." Naomi nodded in agreement. "Patricia's right. We should focus on deepening our impact in existing communities before expanding to new ones." Their measured approach had caught the attention of other investors and potential acquirers. Marcus Chin had introduced them to several venture capital firms interested in providing additional funding for rapid expansion. "Tech Ventures is offering us $5 million, Jonathan told Naomi as they walked home from their office one evening. "They want us to expand to 50 cities within the next year. What do you think about that?" "I think it's a lot of money and a very aggressive timeline. What do you think?" "I think we should be very careful about who we take money from and what commitments we make." They had learned to make major decisions together, always considering both the business implications and the impact on their community. It was a more thoughtful approach than Jonathan had ever used in his previous company. "Let's schedule meetings with 3 different firms," Naomi suggested. "We'll hear their proposals and see whose values align best with ours." The first firm, Tech Ventures, was focused primarily on rapid growth and market domination. The second, Social Impact Partners, emphasized sustainable development and community accountability. The third, Riverside Growth, wanted them to pivot towards serving corporate clients instead of individuals. "The choice seems obvious to me," Naomi said after their final meeting. "Social Impact Partners understands what we're trying to accomplish." "Agreed. Their timeline is more reasonable, and they're willing to let us maintain control over product development and community standards. Plus they're offering almost as much money with much better terms." They accepted the partnership with Social Impact Partners, securing $2 million in funding that would allow them to expand thoughtfully while maintaining their core values. With additional resources, they were able to hire more staff. They brought on 2 developers to support Naomi's technical work, a partnership coordinator to manage relationships with service organizations, and a data analyst to help them better understand user needs and outcomes. "It feels strange having employees," Naomi said as they conducted interviews for additional team members. 6 months ago I was homeless. Now I'm responsible for other people's livelihoods." "You're a natural leader," Jonathan assured her. "People trust you because you've been where they are and you genuinely care about their success. Sometimes I still feel like I'm pretending to know what I'm doing. That's called imposter syndrome, and every successful entrepreneur experiences it. The difference is that you actually do know what you're doing." Their success was attracting media attention. Tech publications were writing about their innovative approach to community building, and social impact organizations were highlighting their impressive outcomes data. "We've been invited to speak at the National Social Innovation Conference," Jonathan told Naomi. "It's the biggest gathering of social entrepreneurs in the country." "That sounds intimidating." It's also a huge opportunity to share our model with other organizations and potentially recruit new partners. The conference was a revelation. They met dozens of other social entrepreneurs working on similar problems, many of whom wanted to collaborate or adapt their approach for different communities. There's so much good work being done, Naomi said as they walked between sessions. I had no idea there were this many people trying to solve these problems. What's exciting is how many of them are interested in what we've built. We could be providing infrastructure for a much larger movement. Their presentation was well received, leading to invitations to pilot their platform with organizations serving veterans, immigrants, and rural communities. Each new partnership taught them something valuable about adapting their approach for different needs and contexts. We're not just building a platform anymore, Naomi observed as they flew home from the conference. We're building a methodology that other people can use. Is that a good thing or a concerning thing? Both. It's good because it means our impact can be much larger than we originally imagined. It's concerning because it means we have more responsibility to get things right. That evening, back in their apartment, they celebrated their growing success with takeout from Tony's Pizza and a bottle of wine that actually cost more than $20. Can I tell you something? Naomi said as they sat on their couch, looking out at the city lights. Always. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined this life. Not just the professional success but the personal happiness. The feeling of waking up every morning excited about the day ahead. A year ago, I was miserable despite having everything money could buy. Now I have less money than I've had in 20 years, and I've never been happier. Do you think it's because of what we're building together or because of us being together? Both. I don't think I could be this happy doing this work with anyone else, and I don't think I could be this happy with you if we weren't doing meaningful work together. Naomi curled up against his side. I love that our relationship and our mission support each other instead of competing. That's because we chose each other and we chose this work for the same reasons. We wanted to build something that mattered with someone who mattered. No regrets about giving up the billionaire lifestyle? Jonathan laughed. None whatsoever. Though I do sometimes miss being able to buy whatever I wanted without checking my bank account first. What do you miss most? Honestly? The ability to help people immediately when I saw them struggling. When you have unlimited resources, you can solve problems with money. Now I have to be more creative. But isn't that better in some ways? Money can solve immediate problems, but it doesn't build long-term capacity or community connections. You're absolutely right. What we're building now is more sustainable and more empowering than anything I could have done just by writing checks. They spent the evening planning their next phase of growth, balancing ambition with sustainability. It was the kind of planning session Jonathan had never experienced in his previous company, where the only question was how to grow faster and make more money. How would you handle sudden success after losing everything? Would you be tempted to grow too fast, or would you stay focused on your original mission? Subscribe and share your thoughts on finding balance between ambition and values. I have an idea for something different, Naomi said as they prepared for bed. What kind of something different? What if we created a fellowship program? We identify people in communities that need our platform, train them to become local coordinators, and give them resources to launch sustainable programs in their areas. That's brilliant. It would let us expand while maintaining local control and community connection. Exactly. Instead of us trying to manage operations in 50 cities, we enable 50 local leaders to build their own community-focused programs using our methodology. And those local leaders would understand their communities better than we ever could. Right. We provide the technology, training, and ongoing support. They provide the local knowledge and community relationships. Jonathan pulled her close, amazed once again by her insight and vision. This is why I love you. You always find ways to make things better and more meaningful. This is why I love you too. You see possibilities in my ideas that I sometimes don't see myself. As they settled in for the night, Jonathan felt profound gratitude for every twist of fate that had brought them together. Losing his fortune had felt like the end of the world, but it had actually been the beginning of a much better life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities as they continued building something unprecedented. But tonight, holding the woman he loved in the home they'd created together, Jonathan felt like the wealthiest man alive. The difference was that this time, his wealth came from sources that could never be taken away from him. 1 year after Jonathan had lost everything, their platform was being recognized as one of the most innovative social impact technologies in the country. They had been featured on the cover of Social Enterprise magazine, won the National Award for Community Innovation, and been invited to present their model at conferences around the world. We have a problem, Patricia announced during their Monday morning team meeting. What kind of problem? Naomi asked, looking up from her laptop. A good problem. We have more partnership requests than we can handle. 3 documentary crews want to film us, and someone from the White House Office of Social Innovation wants to schedule a call about scaling our model nationally. Jonathan and Naomi exchanged glances. Success was bringing opportunities they had never anticipated. The White House call sounds important, Jonathan said. What are they proposing? They want to discuss incorporating our methodology into federal social service programs. Apparently, our outcomes data has caught attention at the highest levels of government. That's incredible, Naomi said, but her tone was cautious. Also potentially complicated. How so? Asked David Kim, their newest team member who handled partnership development. Government partnerships can be transformative, but they can also change your entire organization, Jonathan explained. Compliance requirements, reporting obligations, political considerations. It's a completely different world from what we've built so far. Should we take the call? Patricia asked. Definitely, Naomi said. We should hear what they're proposing. But we need to be very careful about any commitments we make. The call with the White House was both exciting and sobering. Dr. Amanda Chin from the Office of Social Innovation was impressed by their results and wanted to explore piloting their approach in federal programs serving veterans and immigrants. Your platform has achieved outcomes that we've been trying to create for years, Dr. Chin said during their video call. 87% user satisfaction, 63% successful long-term placements, and community engagement metrics that are off the charts. How are you doing this? We keep the community at the center of everything, Naomi explained. Technology facilitates connections, but people create the actual support networks. And we never scale faster than we can maintain relationship quality, Jonathan added. Growth is important, but impact is more important. That's exactly the mindset we need in government programs. Would you be interested in a pilot partnership? After the call, Jonathan and Naomi took a long walk to process the opportunity. This could be huge, Jonathan said. Federal partnerships could help us reach millions of people instead of thousands. It could also completely change who we are as an organization, Naomi replied. Government work comes with restrictions and requirements that might limit our flexibility. What's your gut feeling? My gut says we should explore it carefully but not commit to anything until we understand all the implications. Agreed. Let's bring in a consultant who specializes in government partnerships to help us evaluate the opportunity. That evening, they had dinner at a restaurant that was a far cry from their early days of shared takeout in the warehouse. They could afford nice meals now, but they still preferred simple places that felt comfortable and authentic. Can I tell you something that's been on my mind? Naomi said as they waited for their food. Always. Sometimes I worry that success is changing us. Not in bad ways necessarily, but in ways that might distance us from the people we're trying to help. What do you mean specifically? We live in a nice apartment now. We eat at restaurants whenever we want. We travel to conferences and meet with important people. I'm not complaining about any of that, but I wonder if it's making us less connected to what it feels like to really need help. Jonathan considered this thoughtfully. Do you think it's changing how you make decisions about the platform? I don't think so. But I worry that it might, gradually, without me realizing it. What if we built in some safeguards? Ways to stay connected to user experiences even as our personal circumstances improve. Like what? Regular feedback sessions with users. Quarterly visits to all our partner communities. Maybe even occasional volunteer work at the organizations we serve. I like those ideas. What about something more systematic? What if we required all senior staff, including us, to spend 1 week per quarter working directly with users instead of just managing operations? That's brilliant. Hands-on experience to keep us grounded. And what if we capped our own salaries? Not at poverty levels, but at reasonable amounts that keep us connected to the financial realities of the people we serve. Jonathan smiled. I love that you're thinking about this. It shows that success isn't changing your values. What about you? Do you miss the lifestyle you used to have? Honestly, sometimes I miss the convenience. Being able to solve problems with money, traveling first class, not having to think about budgets. But I don't miss the isolation or the emptiness. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd never lost your fortune? All the time. I'd probably still be building companies that made money but didn't matter. I'd probably still be married to someone I didn't really know. I'd definitely never have met you. So you're glad it happened? I'm grateful for every moment that led me to you and to this work. even the painful ones. Their conversation was interrupted by Naomi's phone buzzing with a text message from Patricia. The documentary crew from PBS wants to schedule filming for next week, Naomi read. They want to follow us through a typical day and interview some of our users. How do you feel about that? Nervous but excited. It's a chance to share our users' stories and show people that technology can be used to build community instead of replacing it. What are you nervous about? Making sure we represent our users authentically. Their stories aren't entertainment. They're real experiences that deserve respect. We'll make that clear to the documentary team from the beginning. The PBS filming went well. The crew was respectful and focused on the human impact of their work rather than just the technology or business success. They interviewed users like Maria, who had found both employment and lasting friendships through the platform, and Patricia, who had transformed from user to employee to community leader. What struck me most about this story, the director told Jonathan and Naomi after filming wrapped, is how you've created something that actually brings people together instead of isolating them behind screens. That was always our goal, Naomi said. Technology should enhance human connection, not replace it. The documentary aired 3 months later and generated significant attention for their work. Applications for their fellowship program increased dramatically, and they received inquiries from organizations around the world wanting to adapt their model. We need to make some decisions about international expansion, Jonathan said as they reviewed partnership requests from organizations in Canada, the UK, and Australia. I'm excited about the possibility, but I want to make sure we can support international partners effectively, Naomi replied. What if we started with one pilot partnership? Maybe the organization in Toronto that's working with immigrant communities. That makes sense. Close enough for regular collaboration, similar enough cultural context that our model should translate well. They spent the next several months developing their international partnership framework, working closely with the Toronto organization to adapt their technology and methodology for Canadian social services and regulatory requirements. The pilot was successful beyond their expectations. Within 6 months, the Toronto program was serving 3,000 users and had achieved satisfaction ratings comparable to their U.S. operations. This proves our model can work in different contexts, Naomi said, reviewing quarterly reports from their international partners. It also proves that the need for authentic community connection is universal. As their second anniversary approached, Jonathan and Naomi took time to reflect on how far they had come. They now had 35 employees, operations in 23 U.S. cities and 4 international locations, and had helped more than 100,000 people access both services and community support. Remember when we thought 50 users was exciting? Naomi laughed as they walked through their expanded office space. Remember when we thought raising $500,000 was impossible? Jonathan replied. What's been the biggest surprise for you in all of this? How much more fulfilling it is to build something with someone you love than to build something alone. What about you? How much capacity I had that I never knew about. A few years ago, I thought I was just someone who couldn't keep her life together. Now I'm running technology development for an organization that's actually making a difference. You were always capable of this. You just needed the right opportunity and support system. We both did. Neither of us could have built this alone. That's what makes it special. It's not just a business partnership or just a romantic relationship. It's both, and they strengthen each other. That evening, they attended a gala celebrating social entrepreneurs in their city. 2 years earlier, Naomi wouldn't have been able to afford a ticket to such an event. Now they were being honored as the guests of recognition for their innovative approach to community building. This feels surreal, Naomi said as they sat at a table with other award recipients. You deserve every bit of recognition you're getting, Jonathan said, taking her hand. You've created something that's changing lives every day. We've created something. Yes, but the vision was yours from the beginning. I just helped you build it. The evening's keynote speaker was Dr. Robert Williams, a renowned expert on social innovation who had been following their work. The most impressive thing about Connect Communities, he said in his speech, isn't their technology or their growth metrics. It's their unwavering commitment to keeping human relationship at the center of everything they do. In a world where technology often isolates people, they've shown that it can actually bring us together. As they drove home from the gala, Jonathan and Naomi talked about their plans for the coming year. The government partnership is moving forward, Jonathan said. If the pilot goes well, we could be serving federal programs within 18 months. That's exciting and terrifying, Naomi replied. We'll need to be very careful about maintaining our values as we scale. We will. We've built good systems for that, and we have a team that shares our commitment to putting community first. What about us personally? Where do you see our relationship heading? Jonathan glanced at her, smiling. I've been waiting for you to ask that question. Why? Because I've been thinking about it for months, but I wanted to make sure you were ready for the conversation. I'm ready. I want to marry you, Naomi. I want to build a life together that's as strong and meaningful as the business we've built together. I want that too, she said without hesitation. I've wanted it for a long time, but I was afraid to bring it up while we were still figuring out the business. And now I think we've proven that we can handle both professional and personal partnership. Actually, I think they make each other stronger. So is that a yes? That's definitely a yes. Jonathan pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face her fully. I don't have a ring yet, and this isn't the romantic proposal you deserve, but I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. Will you marry me? Yes, Naomi said, leaning over to kiss him. Yes, absolutely yes. As they held each other in the car, looking out at the city where they had met and built their life together, Jonathan felt a completion that he had never experienced before. He had found not just professional success but personal fulfillment. Not just a business partner but a life partner. Not just a way to make money but a way to make a difference. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities as they continued growing their organization and planning their wedding. But tonight, with Naomi in his arms and their future stretching out ahead of them, Jonathan felt like the luckiest person alive. The best part was knowing that their success was just beginning. They had built something sustainable and meaningful that would continue creating positive impact long after they were gone. And they had built it together, with love and shared values guiding every decision. The morning after their engagement, Jonathan and Naomi arrived at their office to find Patricia waiting with news that would change everything. We have a situation, she said, holding up her phone. 3 different companies made acquisition offers overnight. The largest one is for $47 million. Jonathan and Naomi exchanged stunned glances. $47 million was more money than either had ever imagined having. Who made the offers? Naomi asked, settling into her chair. TechCorp, Global Solutions and Impact Ventures. TechCorp is the $47 million offer. Global Solutions offered $32 million. Impact Ventures offered $28 million but with guarantees about maintaining our mission and keeping all current employees. How did they even know we might be interested in selling? Jonathan wondered. The PBS documentary aired last night. Apparently, it generated a lot of attention in the business world as well as the social impact community. Jonathan's phone rang. It was Marcus Chin from their original investment firm. Jonathan, congratulations on the engagement and on the incredible response to the documentary. I'm calling because I assume you're getting acquisition interest. We are. 3 offers so far. I thought you might be. Can we schedule a call to discuss your options? These kinds of offers can be life-changing, but they can also completely derail your mission if you're not careful. Absolutely. Can you call us back in an hour? Naomi and I need to process this first. After hanging up, Jonathan and Naomi sat in silence for several minutes. $47 million, Naomi said finally. $47 million, Jonathan repeated. That would make us both very wealthy. It would solve every financial concern either of us will ever have. But it would also mean giving up control of something we've built with our own hands and hearts. Naomi walked to the window, looking out at the community they served. What do you think would happen to our users if TechCorp bought us? Based on their track record? They'd probably maximize revenue by charging service organizations higher fees and selling user data to marketing companies. And our community focus? Would probably disappear within a year as they optimized for profit instead of impact. So taking their offer would essentially destroy everything we've built. It might. On the other hand, we could take the money and start something new. $47 million would give us the resources to launch 10 different social impact ventures. Naomi turned back to face him. Is that what you want to do? I want to do whatever you want to do. This is our decision together. What I want is to keep building what we've started. But I also want to be honest about the fact that $47 million would change our lives in ways that might be good for us personally. How so? We could buy a house, plan a wedding without worrying about money, maybe think about having children someday without financial stress. Those are all good things. They are good things. The question is whether they're worth giving up our life's work. Patricia knocked on their door. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to share something with you before you make any decisions. What is it? I've been fielding calls all morning from users who saw the documentary. They're worried that success might change us, that we might lose focus on the community that made this possible. She handed them a printout of messages from their platform. Maria wrote this: "You saved my life by helping me find not just a job but a support system. Please don't let money make you forget about people like me." And this is from Robert, one of our veteran users. "Corporate takeovers usually mean the end of programs that actually help people. I hope you'll choose us over profit." Naomi read through more of the messages, tears forming in her eyes. "They trust us to keep their interests first. And they should," Jonathan said firmly. "These are the people who made our success possible. We owe them more than just a profitable exit." So what do? We explore all our options carefully. We talk to each potential acquirer and understand exactly what they're proposing. We consult with Marcus and other advisors. And then we make the decision that best serves our mission and our community. Over the next week, they took meetings with all three companies interested in acquiring them. TechCorp was exactly what they had expected, focused on growth metrics and revenue optimization with little interest in community impact. The executives kept referring to their users as data points and suggested ways to monetize the relationship more effectively. "Thank you for your time," Jonathan said politely when the meeting ended. "We'll be in touch." "That was awful," Naomi said as they left the TechCorp offices. "They see our users as products to be sold. Global Solutions was better but still concerning. They understood the social impact mission but wanted to expand so rapidly that quality would inevitably suffer." "We could have you in 200 cities within 18 months, the CEO promised. "Think of the scale of impact you could achieve." "What about maintaining relationship quality as we grow?" Naomi asked. "We have systems for that. Standardized processes, automated quality control, performance metrics for all staff." "But what about the personal connections that make our platform work?" "Personal connections don't scale efficiently. You have to systematize community building if you want real growth." After that meeting, Jonathan and Naomi walked through the city in discouraged silence. "They don't understand that personal connections are exactly what makes our platform valuable," Naomi said finally. "They understand it intellectually, but they don't believe it's scalable. So they want to replace it with systems that will kill what makes us special." The meeting with Impact Ventures was different from the first two. The team was led by Sarah Washington, a former social worker who had built several successful social enterprises. "We've been following your work for months," Sarah said. "What impresses us isn't just your growth metrics. It's your consistency in putting community first. What would you do differently if you acquired us?" Naomi asked. "Honestly? Very little. We'd provide capital for expansion, back-office support for operations, and access to our network of social impact organizations. But we'd leave all program decisions and community management to you." "And if growth conflicts with impact?" Jonathan asked. "Impact wins every time. We're not interested in building something that makes money but doesn't serve people." "What about our current team?" "Everyone keeps their jobs. Everyone gets equity in the combined organization. Everyone has a voice in major decisions." After the Impact Ventures meeting, Jonathan and Naomi felt cautiously optimistic. "They seem to understand what we're trying to do," Naomi said. "And they have resources that could help us do it better and faster. But it would still mean giving up independence." "True. Though we'd be trading independence for impact. With their support, we could probably help 10 times as many people." That evening, they had dinner with Marcus Chen to discuss their options. "What does your gut tell you?" Marcus asked after they'd reviewed all three offers. "TechCorp would destroy our mission," Naomi said immediately. "Global Solutions would probably dilute our mission beyond recognition," Jonathan added. "And Impact Ventures?" Marcus prompted. "Could potentially amplify our mission," Naomi said slowly. "But we'd have to trust them to keep their promises." "What would you do in our situation?" Jonathan asked Marcus. "I'd ask myself one question. In 5 years, which option would let me look back with the least regret?" Jonathan and Naomi looked at each other, both knowing the answer. "We want to accept the Impact Ventures offer," Naomi said. "With one modification," Jonathan added. "We want guarantees written into the contract that community impact will always take priority over profit, and that all major program decisions require approval from current leadership." "They'll probably accept those terms," Marcus said. Sarah Washington built her reputation on honoring commitments like that. The next morning, they called Sarah Washington to accept her offer with their requested modifications. "I'm delighted," Sarah said. "And I have no problem with your contract modifications. They actually make me more confident that this partnership will work." "Why?" Naomi asked. Because they show me that you'll never compromise your values for convenience. That's exactly the kind of leadership we want in our organization. As they signed the acquisition papers 2 weeks later, Jonathan reflected on how different this felt from his previous business exits. Instead of celebrating personal wealth, he felt excited about expanded capacity to serve their community. Any second thoughts? Naomi asked as they finished signing documents. None whatsoever. This feels like the right decision for all the right reasons. What's our first priority with Impact Ventures? Expanding our fellowship program internationally. With their resources and network, we could have community coordinators in 50 cities within 2 years. And personally? Jonathan smiled, pulling her close. Personally, I think it's time to start planning a wedding. I'd like that very much. As they left the lawyer's office as newly wealthy social entrepreneurs, Jonathan felt a satisfaction that had nothing to do with money. They had built something meaningful, found partners who shared their values, and positioned themselves to create even greater impact in the future. Most importantly, they had done it together, never losing sight of the people they served or the love that had grown alongside their professional success. The best part was knowing that this wasn't an ending but a new beginning. With greater resources and broader reach, they could help even more people build the kinds of community connections that had changed both their lives. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. But tonight, holding the woman he loved and celebrating their shared success, Jonathan felt grateful for every moment that had led them to this point. 1 year later, Jonathan stood in their new headquarters, watching Naomi address a gathering of community coordinators from 37 cities across 4 countries. Their partnership with Impact Ventures had exceeded every expectation, allowing them to scale their impact while maintaining the personal touch that made their platform special. The numbers tell an important story, Naomi was saying to the group. But the human connections tell the real story. In the past year, we've facilitated over 300,000 successful service connections, but more importantly, we've helped create lasting relationships that continue long after people no longer need our platform. Jonathan smiled as he listened to her speak. She had grown into a confident leader while never losing the compassion and authenticity that had drawn him to her in the first place. Their wedding was scheduled for the following month, a small ceremony in the community center where they had first worked together. They had decided to donate most of their acquisition money to establish a foundation supporting grassroots community organizations, keeping enough to live comfortably but not extravagantly. The beauty of what we've built, Naomi continued, is that success creates more success. Every person who finds community through our platform becomes someone who can offer community to others. After her presentation, Jonathan joined Naomi as she mingled with their coordinators, hearing updates from communities around the world. Jonathan, Naomi, called Patricia, who now served as their director of global operations. I want you to meet someone special. She introduced them to James Thompson, a coordinator from their London program. James has something amazing to share, Patricia said. We just celebrated our 1,000th successful job placement, James said proudly. But what's really special is that 200 of those placements came from referrals by previous users who now work at those companies. They're creating opportunities for each other. That's exactly what we hoped would happen, Naomi said, beaming. Community building itself. It gets better, James continued. Several of our users have started their own small businesses and are specifically hiring other people from our network. They're not just finding jobs. They're creating jobs for each other. Jonathan felt the familiar excitement that came from seeing their vision become reality on a scale they had never imagined possible. Later that evening, he and Naomi walked through the city where their journey had begun, stopping by Tony's Pizza, which had become something of a pilgrimage site for them. Hey, look who's here, Tony called out when he saw them. My favorite success story. We brought you something, Naomi said, handing him an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. What's this for? Tony asked, obviously moved. For being one of the first people to show us that community matters more than money, Jonathan explained. We want you to use this however you think would best serve the neighborhood. You don't have to do this. We want to, Naomi said. You were part of our community before we knew we were building one. As they walked home, Jonathan reflected on how much his understanding of wealth had changed. Do you ever regret not keeping more of the money from the acquisition? He asked Naomi. Never. Do you? Not for a second. I'm wealthier now than I ever was as a billionaire. How so? When I was worth billions, I was isolated and empty. Now I have meaningful work, a community of people I care about, and a woman I love more than I ever thought possible. That's real wealth. What do you think would have happened if we'd kept all the money? We probably would have lost touch with why we started this work in the first place. Money has a way of creating distance between you and the people you're trying to serve. And now we have enough to be comfortable, but not so much that we forget what it feels like to worry about basic needs. Exactly. We can focus on impact instead of lifestyle. The next morning brought exciting news. Dr. Amanda Chin from the White House called to tell them that their federal pilot program had been so successful that the administration wanted to expand it to serve all veterans programs nationwide. This could help hundreds of thousands of veterans transition back to civilian life, Dr. Chin explained. Your model of combining service access with peer support is exactly what we've been looking for. We'd be honored to expand the partnership, Naomi said. How quickly are you thinking? We'd like to have you operational in all 50 states within 18 months. I know that's ambitious, but the need is urgent and your results speak for themselves. After the call, Jonathan and Naomi looked at each other with a mixture of excitement and awe. Hundreds of thousands of veterans, Naomi said softly. Can you imagine the impact we could have? It's almost overwhelming to think about. In the best possible way. They spent the rest of the morning planning their expansion strategy, identifying potential coordinators and partner organizations in states where they didn't currently operate. We'll need to hire at least 20 new staff members, Jonathan calculated, and develop specialized training for working with veteran communities. Good thing we have partners who understand the importance of growing thoughtfully. That afternoon they received another piece of news that put everything in perspective. Maria, one of their first users, had been accepted to graduate school with a full scholarship to study social work. I want to do what you do, she wrote in her email. I want to help other people find community and support the way you helped me. This platform didn't just change my circumstances. It changed who I am as a person. Naomi had tears in her eyes as she read the message aloud. This is why we do this work, she said. One person at a time, one connection at a time, one community at a time. And now we get to do it on a scale that could help millions of people. That evening, as they prepared for their wedding planning session with the community center coordinator, Jonathan took Naomi's hands and looked into her eyes. I have something to ask you, he said. Jonathan, you already proposed. I said yes, remember? Not that kind of question. He smiled. I want to ask if you're ready to spend the rest of your life building something bigger than either of us could create alone. I've been ready for that since the night I found you in the rain. Even when it means long days and difficult decisions and the constant pressure of knowing that thousands of people are depending on us? Especially then. That's when partnership matters most. What about when we disagree about strategy or priorities? Then we'll figure it out together the same way we always have. With honesty and respect and a shared commitment to serving the people who need us most. Jonathan pulled her close, amazed once again by her wisdom and strength. I love you, Naomi Johnson. Not just as the woman I want to marry, but as the partner I want to change the world with. I love you too, Jonathan Pierce. And I can't wait to see what we build together next. As they held each other in their apartment, looking out at the city where they had found each other and built their life's work, Jonathan felt a deep sense of completion. Not the kind of completion that comes from reaching a destination, but the kind that comes from finding your true purpose and the perfect person to pursue it with. Tomorrow would bring their wedding planning session, followed by strategic meetings about their federal expansion and international growth. Next month would bring their wedding, surrounded by the community they had helped to build. Next year would bring new challenges and opportunities as they worked to serve hundreds of thousands of additional people. But tonight, in this moment, with Naomi in his arms and their shared future stretching out ahead of them, Jonathan felt like the luckiest person alive. He had lost everything that he thought mattered and found everything that actually did matter. The warehouse where they had started felt like a lifetime ago, but the values they had learned there would guide them forever. No matter how large their organization grew or how many people they served, they would never forget that real wealth comes from authentic relationships, meaningful work, and the courage to help others even when you have nothing to give but hope. Their empire wasn't built on money or power or status. It was built on love, community, and the simple truth that everyone deserves a chance to belong somewhere. And that was the kind of empire that would last forever. As they settled in for the night, planning their wedding and their future, Jonathan knew that losing his billions had been the best thing that ever happened to him. Because it had led him to Naomi, to their work, and to an understanding of success that no amount of money could ever buy. Together, they had built something that would outlast them both, something that would continue helping people find community and hope long after they were gone. And they had built it with love, one person at a time, one connection at a time, one day at a time. The world's richest billionaire had indeed lost hope. But a homeless girl had given him something infinitely more valuable. A reason to live, a purpose to pursue, and a love that would last forever. Their story was just beginning.